Yo, 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 what is up? What is up, YouTube Boxing family? It is IK right here. I'm back with another great video for you guys today. I'm going to be talking about should open scoring judging be a thing in boxing? So, I figured that I talk about this because it seems like in other parts of the world, in certain matches, there is open scoring. I believe in Costa Rica, if I'm not mistaken, with the recent, Yacasa Valle and like what the Thithi Nguyen fight card. I'm not too sure about that, but I mean, I know for some of what the fights that were premiered on that Golden Boy card that happened not too long ago, this past Friday, right? There was open scoring for that particular, card of its own, where they had like certain open scoring, tallied up, for the fight itself. But um, I'm just gonna give like my case of like, should open scoring be a thing in boxing as an international thing all over the world? So yeah, let's talk about it, man. I definitely have a little bit of interesting thoughts about it, and I figured it would be a pretty good thing for me to talk about. And I think, the biggest thing that I have with this is just that, like, open scoring is a good thing, but the problem that I have with, open scoring is that that would give a fighter that is a politically protected fighter more confidence coming into further rounds to say that scoring of its own should be perfectly fine if I'm like, if I'm actually winning the fight and I know that, I don't have to do much to really win because because I'm like the more, protected fighter, or if I have like more control in my arsenal to actually keep the fight in my favor, in which that's like really crazy for for anybody to think like that. And I think the biggest issue of what the matter is just that a lot of people can really be of what the mindset to believe that open scoring could be a good thing. But I can probably even just think about the outcome of like what open scoring can be. And I think that the biggest problem is just that, imagine if Canelo Alvarez, he was told that he's winning on the cards based off of open scoring, and that would be something in terms of you don't have to work as hard anymore to get the victory. Because imagine if Bivol was told in the Canelo Alvarez fight, hey Bivol, you're actually losing this fight, yet you dominated Canelo in the very first 6 rounds. All three judges, or two out of the three judges, have you losing by 5 rounds, and you only won 1 round out of 6 rounds. Like, yeah, that would most likely piss off a fighter. But it's like, I don't know, like personally for me, I got mixed feelings about it, because it's like I can easily tell that there are plenty of people that would be probably tell me, up inside of the comments, that they wouldn't mind open judging. But the thing is that we need to have better marketized judging in boxing, because that's really like the biggest problem. If judging was fairly judged, where you actually have to have a proper knowledge of the sport to know what you're looking at in a fight, then I'm perfectly fine with open judging. That should be done through the consent of fighters if they want open judging, because at least that way you actually have like a proper, mindset coming into the fight. But, let's just say if promoters weren't like a thing to interfere with judging in the first place, and judging was marketized through, marketized, agencies that worked with networks to say, okay, look, we have judges that are hired and trained through, select, businesses that are, highly certified to give, judging, a fair balance in the sport of boxing. That would be perfectly fine, because shit, I would love to be a judge in boxing. But the thing is like, the judging in any fight, you have to like be really, really careful with how you judge a fight. And obviously these are fighters' careers that you're messing with, so you can't be just ultra biased in a fight. You have to be as, honest as you can. And I think that's really like the biggest problem in boxing overall. And I think that's where, the mindset of like how much progression can you go far into the fight to say like, okay, this fighter won all these rounds, but yet if open judging is scored and we hear that this fighter that should be winning is losing 7 rounds to 0, then that's really where the fight itself can really put itself in major destructive content or just destructive conflict in general. So that's pretty much like my only problem that I have with it. But I don't know. I think open judging would be a good thing if the judges were heavily trained and they did not be biased in scoring rounds. And they have to have like a good reason why they would score these rounds. That's another thing with open judging. I think with open judging, a judge needs to give a proper testimony after the fight of why they judged a round. And then there should be a final, review of that judging scoring to make sure that a fight of that magnitude is heavily justified to give that particular fighter, let the win, to solidify the victory. So, I mean, that's just how I feel like, judging should be in boxing. Judging needs to have like a proper, dispute resolution organization system to make sure that if a fighter is in the verge of being robbed in a very close, difficult fight or a fight that they should have won single-handedly on the cards, then judges should be held accountable where they lose their pay and they get suspended for, let's just say, 6 months to a year, and they should definitely not be a judge anymore if they continue to make poor judging decisions in scoring a fight. And I mean, I could be crazy for saying that, but it's really not, because it's like you're screwing a fighter's life, a fighter's life by saying, "Oh, well, screw you. I don't want to see you win." F you, Michael Fox. Michael Fox, shouldn't be a world champion, knowing that if he was doing good in the first place to solidify the victory, then of course, that's really where I will say that judging needs to be fixed, because nobody doesn't want a crappy judge, ruining a fighter's career. But then again, how are these judges hired in boxing? Judges are hired through promoters. That's the biggest problem with judging. When you have judges that work with the state and work with promoters, what do you think is going to happen? Even though that I am an anti-state, libertarian thinker, I already know where the puzzle pieces lie. The puzzle pieces lie by which you see where the problem is, where there is a monopoly on arbitration held by a violent monopolistic arbiter, i.e. the state. So therefore, when the state gets involved into sports, nobody doesn't really have like a fair shake in what they want to say in the sport, itself. So therefore, there's no proper justice to make sure that people have a fair shake to know where they stand in the sport of boxing. So when promoters and sanction bodies come hand in hand together to work against the consumer and make the consumer pissed off and make the fighters pissed off, where they come into their fights not knowing if they are going to win this fight, but then again, they have to be put into fear to think that they cannot win this fight at all because they will very well get robbed. Now, how is that fair? Well, it's not fair, because when you actually do think about it, a lot of people are, dealing with this issue every single day. And I think like the biggest issue of the matter is that a lot of people in the sport of boxing choose to disregard, the poor fact that judging in the sport really plays a huge historic role of how fighters are being screwed over. And the political discrimination that fighters have gone through, especially fighters of, the Black American descendants, where, they don't get their fair justice, and the judges that should never be judges in the first place, they don't get held, responsible for the corrupt, foul play in what they do, because there's no proper marketization to make sure judging is fair. Otherwise, if we had fair judging in the first place, as boxing should be, boxing would be probably one of the best sports in the world in terms of regulating a market of its own to have marketized, you know, marketized, fully trained, athletically, reviewed judges to make sure that judges, when they come into a fight, they need to come in with a non-biased attitude. They need to be put into separate rooms watching a fight and making sure that a fight of any fight that they watch needs to be carefully reviewed. They need to look at the fight, round for round, and make sure that they're scoring the rounds, properly. And if they do fail to do that, they need to be held, responsible, for their actions. I don't care what anybody has to say. It's just like, honestly, in boxing, there's just too much, screwed up crap in the sport where people just end up thinking like, people like myself, we're not going to end up saying anything like about it. And it's like, I think it's just time for us to just really like wake up and look into the mirror of where the root of what the problem is. And the root of the problem is just that the state is a major role in screwing up the beauty of the sport. But on top of that, it's the people that work within these sanctioning bodies and these promotional agencies that come in cahoots with state governing bodies and sanction bodies all together to do corrupt stuff. So I say when that's gone, that's really when the sport itself puts itself back into proper justice. But other than that, it's just like at this point there's really nothing that's being fixed. But to really finish up answering the question, should open judging be a thing in boxing? It should, if a ref or if a judge is carefully trained and carefully reviewed, for the sake of making sure that they judge a fight fairly, and making sure that the open judging is actually carefully reviewed after the fight to make sure that based off of what the consensus of who really won the fight in that given particular round or given particular fight is actually given the proper justice as a fighter to win the fight. So I mean, that's just my take on it. I have certain beliefs that could be a little bit more mixed, but just as far as how I think about the whole idea as a whole, I mean, it's a good idea. I think either way, like, there's a reason why, people don't really talk about it as much, but either way, I think, it will be a good experiment to try out because, in places like Nicaragua, they're doing it. Obviously, on the Yacatsa Valle and Thithi Nguyen card, it happened on that particular level. So I think for bigger cards, especially for cards where we know that it's going to be a close neck and neck fight, it would be good to inspire a fighter to make sure that if that fighter is losing, they should know that they are losing and not think that the fight is close. But I mean, if a fighter is being robbed, then yeah, there should be open judging. Like if Michael Fox was going to be robbed in a fight again, there should be open judging. So therefore, there could be legal restitution for the fighter's career, and the judge itself can be held responsible for their wrongdoings. Otherwise, you don't become a judge no more, and you will be held under trial by way of legal prosecution. I mean, that's just how I see it, from like a legal standpoint. Not to get the state involved fully, but to have it on a marketized level where you have marketized, reputation firms to make sure that these, criterias are met for having a proper judging coming into the fight. And I think that's where boxing will shine a lot better if they actually did do it like that. So, I mean, that's just how I feel. That's just how I view the whole crux of that particular situation. But I think it's something that should be, experimented. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think, I think fair judging starts with open judging, not hiding, your numbers or your, views of how you thought this fighter won these amount of rounds. Like, no, like, fair judging really starts there, and in the sport of boxing. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out and goodbye.